Happy Wednesday. I'm Terry Butchie from Ohio State University Mansfield Math Literacy Initiative. We're going to do some more math today. I had a 4th grade teacher ask a little bit about expanded notation. So I'm going to share with you a couple of games that you can play with your child at home, or if you're a classroom teacher, that you can use in your classroom, that bridges the idea of regrouping into the idea of expanded notation into the thousands. So that's what we'll end up doing today, is looking at expanded notation into the thousands cluster. So I'd like to introduce first this game, and this is a game from the Algebra Project. It's called the trading game or the banker's game. There are a lot of teachers that use this game in a lot of different ways, but it's a really powerful game. It seems really simple at first, but it translates into a lot of notation that will help your student as they go along. So it really just gets them used to the idea of trading and regrouping. And I know when I went to school years and years ago, it's called borrowing and carrying and all those kinds of things, but we really just want to talk about regrouping, because we're not changing the value of a number, we're just regrouping it in a different way. So try to use those kinds of terms instead of carrying and borrowing and things like that. So let's play the first game. So to make a game board, each child, and if you're playing with your student at home or whatever, each one needs a game board. So again, I'm going to take just a plain piece of white paper. We're going to fold it into thirds. So fold into thirds. And again, thirds are a little bit hard, but it gets them used to seeing thirds. So if I like to teach students that they want to kind of bridge these over and try to make them as even as they can get them. And then we'll fold these. And then to make a table, we're just going to fold it over once like this. So when we open this back up, each player has a game board that looks like this. I made a big one up here so that you could see them. But really, they're supposed to be sitting in front of each player. So again, this is called the trading game. And in the trading game, we need to first decide what the trading value is going to be. So typically when we start this, a lot of times we'll use just a trading value of 3. You can make it whatever trading value you want to. And once you see how you can use it to develop more concepts, then you might want to switch up how much you have your trading value for. But I'm going to use a trading value of 3. So what that means is every time I roll a die, and again, you don't have to have fancy materials at home. You can, if you don't have a die, and not everybody has a die or dice at home, just make up number cards and just pull a number card just like you would when you're playing old or Go Fish or something. So don't get all stuck in the materials. The other thing is I'm just using colored pieces of construction paper for my tools or my counters. Again, you can use whatever you want, whatever you have around the house. So if you're doing this at home with your child, whatever you have around the house, if you want to use those tools, just make sure that they are similar. So I have colored paper and then 3 different distinct colors. So that's what I have for this. You can use beans or toys or whatever, but just make sure they're consistent. So we take turns in this game. I'm going to use a die that has 0, 1, 2, and 3 on it. And all it is a die that I covered up with masking tape and then put these numbers on. Again, just make up your number cards if you don't have a die. So I'm going to roll first. This will be me and this will be my competitor. So I'm going to roll, and I got, I got a 0. So the rule of the game is whatever you roll, you get that many, whatever that number is, reds. So we're going to work from the reds. So I rolled a 0. I get 0 reds. Bummer for me. So now this is my partner rolling. My partner gets a 1. Or actually not my partner, my competitor. So my competitor gets a 1. So let's go back to the roll again. Whatever you roll, that is how many reds you get. So here's my competitor has a red there. All right, so I'm going to roll again. And I got a 1. So I'm going to put my 1 here. And then my competitor got a 3. So that means it doesn't, this red is already here. So I get 3 more reds, or actually my competitor gets 3 more reds. So 1, 2, and 3. So now we need to get to the second, so I'm just kind of displaying or showing you these ideas. So now we get to this second rule, which is that you can't have 3 or more counters in a column. If you do, you have to make some trades. So because the trade is for 3, every time you can make a trade, you have to make a trade. So if you can make a trade, make the trade. Okay. Now, and then you have to give your board up. So like if I'm the competitor, this is my board, and so this is my board up here, this is the competitor's board. So before the competitor passes the die back to me, or to this person, they have to say that they're finished with their moves. So if this is my board, I'm not finished with my moves, because I can make a move still. I can take 3 of my reds, and that's what this trade value is. 3 of my reds, and I'm going to take these 3 reds, and because my trade value is 3, I'm going to take these 3 reds and I'm going to trade it in for 1 purple. 3 for 1, that's the trade value. So I'm going to take it over here, and I'm going to trade that for my purple. So now, can we make any more trades? No, we have to trade if we get 3 of something, we don't have 3 of something. So I'm going to roll again. Now it's my turn. So this person gives up the turn to this next person. I just rolled a 2, so I get 2 reds. Remember, whatever you roll, that's how many reds we get in this case. So now I have to give up my turn. But I'm not finished because I can still make a trade. So I have 3 reds. I'm going to take those 3 reds and trade them in for a purple. So 3 reds, because our trade value is 3. 3 reds is a purple. That means I don't have these anymore. I traded them in. Traded these fellows in. Let's put these right here. So now, next turn is 2. They got 2 reds. We'll put those up here. 2 reds. And can I move again? Can I do anything else? Yes, I can. I have a trade up here. So now I have 3 reds, and we know whenever you get 3 reds, that's really a purple. So I'm going to trade these in for a purple. And can I make any more trades? No, I can't make any more trades for this. So now let's look at, it's my turn. I'm going to roll. I got a 2. 2 reds. Remember, whenever we roll, that's how many reds you get. So I have 2 reds there now. I have 3 counters, but they're not 3 of the same color, so I can't trade them in. If you trade in, you have to have 3 of that same color to trade in, so I can't make any trades. So the competitor will go, they have 2 reds. And can they make a trade? No, there's not 3 reds or 3 purples. So we're looking for these chunks of 3. Chunks of 3, that's important. So now I'll roll again, and I know you understand this probably now. So I have 2 more reds, so I rolled and got a 2. Okay, so now I can make a trade. So I'm going to trade 3 of something in for something else. So 3 reds are traded in for a purple. Okay, so now this person's turn, and they got a 1. So what does that mean? I put a 1 red on there. Can I make a trade? Yes, I can make a trade. I can take these 3. I'm going to trade them in for a purple. And can I make another trade? Yes, I have 3 purples. Now we didn't talk about this, but this is like getting your students thinking about patterns. So if 3 reds is a purple, then 3 purples is a black. And so you can talk to your students about, like, what do you think 3 purples? What do you think they would be? Instead of just giving them like straight out rules all the time, let's just talk about what would make sense, what's fair. And so we have 3 purples here. I'm going to trade them in for a black. So I'm going to trade these purples in for a black. Now, there's 2 different ways that you can play this game. One is you play until somebody gets a black. So if that's the way we're playing, the second player would already be winning this game. The other is to play a certain length of time and just see what everybody gets and if somebody has more than another person. So you can keep playing that, and again, the idea is to get it down so that this kind of pattern and this system that is working through, we just want our students to get used to that system. So we're working from the right to the left, and 3 of these makes 1 of these, 3 of these makes 1 of these. What do you think if we had another? This is a good question that you ask your child or your student. What do you think if we had another column? What would 3 blacks be? It'd be whatever we decide the next column is, and we're going to talk a little bit about that in just a minute. But this is just getting the ideas of trading into the hands of kids. So now let's think about what we can do with something like this. So I'm going to bridge over into how we can use this for expanded notation into the thousands. So what can we do with this? What do we understand? Let's look first. If we have, let me make up a board. I'm going to make up a board. Let's look at a board that has 2. We're going to just look at this bottom board and I'll play with it just a little bit. So we may have 2 blacks, a purple, and 2 reds. All right, so what can we do with this? So we can look right here and we can figure out how many reds each board is worth. So let's think about that for a second. How many reds is each board worth? Or we could say, what is the value of the board? Let me write this down. What is the value of the board in terms of red? And all that means is if we switched them all back to red, what would the board's value be? So let's look at 2 different cases. So let's look at these 2 boards here. Let me erase this. We'll write the definition or the directions down so that you can see them also. So what do we have on this board? Let's look at board column A and B. Okay, so on this board we have 1 black, we have 2 purples, and we have 1 red. 1 black, 2 purples, and 1 red. The B board has 2 blacks, 1 purple, and 2 reds. So what does that mean? What does this mean? 1 black, 2 purple, 1 red. What does that mean? So let's figure out what it means in terms of red. So that means let's go back and start thinking. Now, and this isn't, you don't want to tell your students. We want to talk about it. This is a conversation that we have with them. So let's figure out how much this is worth. What's a value in reds? It's value in reds. Well, this one's already in reds, right? So we don't have to do any messing around like that one. It's already in reds. But this is in purple. So how many reds are in 2 purples? So let's go back and think about it. And this is the question you want to ask your student, and then just don't talk after. Just let them figure it out. Let them play with this. You're already in kind of a play game mode. So it's kind of like when you're just playing a board game. When students are playing a board game or playing a sport, we want them to be immersed in the language of the game. And so the language of the game here is trades and values, and that's what we want them to be immersed in right now. So let's look at purple. So let's go back and you're talking, have this conversation with the kids. Don't tell them. I'm just talking to a screen right now. So I'm just giving you some ideas on how to talk to your students, but you want all of this kind of conversation to come from them. So ask the question so that their voice is heard when you're talking about it. So let's go back here. Can we figure out how many reds are in this purple? How many reds are in this purple that we have right here? And then again, hold off, let your student figure out and tell you. Well, we know, now I'm talking as a teacher again, so I'm just going to tell instead of play. So we know that to get one of these, we have 3 reds. So I'm going to write on top of here that we have 3 reds for that purple, and that we have 3 reds for that purple. So now we know that each one of those purples is worth 3 reds. And that'll be the same for our friends down here. So this purple is 3 reds. And so that'll help us out also. So we're looking at in terms of red. Now we need to look at the black. So what do we know? And this is the kind of time when you want your student to really be able to play with some of the tools, okay? So let's look at what happens. If we have a purple, we just said that if we have a purple, that purple is 3 reds. So I'm going to write that down on here. 3 reds. I'm going to just use an R. Now, that R represents reds. Now, it might seem simple to us. Now, of course, let's just call it an R. But for kids, to get to that notation of, we don't want to write red every time. We're just going to use R. R will stand for something. That'll help them out when they get into algebra, when they get into looking at ideas of numbers that mean something in one context, and then we can change it in another context. And so this shorthand notation is a good idea to play around with when your kids are in this level. So that has 3 reds. If that purple has 3 reds, we know that this purple is going to be worth 3 reds also, and this purple will be worth 3 reds. Now, why do we care? Why did we put these together? We care because together, when you have 3 purples, what do? We exchange that then for a black. All right? So we exchange this for, go ahead and put it down, for a black. Why do we care about this? Why is this important? Well, it's important because now we know that each of these blacks, because we look at our pattern, we look at some consistencies, 3 reds for each of these purple gives us a black. So what's a black worth in terms of red? Remember, we're trying to figure out its value in reds. So what's its value in reds? Well, we have 3 reds here, 3 reds here, and 3 reds here, so that's 9 reds altogether. So that means each black counter is worth 9 reds. I'm just going to put a 9R in here, and my colors aren't working too much because it's black, huh? All right, so now we can start looking at comparing these numbers because we can change them all to reds. And when we change them all to that constant, then we can compare them together. So let's look at what we have here. So I'm going to move this one up just a smidgen. All right. So now let's look at what we have. So we have one, I'm going to use some shorthand. So we have a black, 2 purple, and a red. And we want to know how many reds that gives us. Same thing down here. We have 2 blacks on here though. 1 purple and 2 reds. And we want to know how many reds that is. So let's look at this. This looks a little complicated, but if you're doing this with kids, like 1st grade, 2nd grade, 3rd grade, 4th grade, this is it could possibly come out this way. That they're using these kinds of abbreviations and notations, and we want them to feel fluid with using these kind of abbreviations and notations. So what do we know? We know that we have I'm going to use a different color here. And that we have 1 black. Well, how much is a black worth? It's worth 9 reds. 1 black is worth 9 reds. We have 2 purples, but we know that a purple is worth how many reds? 3 reds. So a purple is worth 3 reds. And we have 1 red. Well, a red is a red. But we want to know how many reds that is altogether. So we have 1 that's worth 9. We have 2 that are worth 3. And we have 1 that is 1. So what do we have? This one has a value of 16 reds. Now let's look at our board. And these are the kinds of questions you can ask with your child. So if you're playing with your child, you can say, okay, I've got 16 reds. Do you think yours is going to be more or less than 16 reds? And then stop. Don't say anything else. More or less than 16 reds. Now, if they say just yell out a more or yell out a less, you don't say, yeah, good, and then move on. You say why. Always, always, always ask why. Whether they're right or wrong, always, always, always ask why, because that justification piece is incredibly important in mathematics. So you want to say, okay, let's just see. What do we think is going to happen? And hopefully they'll see that they have 2 that are worth 9, and they'll see that that's more. If not, then let's figure it out. And we're going to figure it out anyway. So we have 2 blacks. We know what? We know a black is worth, this is 2. We know a black is worth 9 reds. So we have this, and we have 1 purple, and we said a purple is worth 3 reds, and we have 2 reds. So how many reds is that altogether? Well, we have 2 9s, or 18. We have 1 3, and then we have 2. So that 2 and the 18, I know, makes my 10, a chunk of 20, so 23. So were we right? Yep, the bottom board wins. So now, all of this builds into what we're going to do next, which is moving now into the thousands chunk. So we have this chunk at the ones of hundreds, tens, and ones. Then we have a chunk at the thousands. And that gets a little confusing for kids. So we have to blend that into what they know already as well as we can. Okay, so let's look at what we would do with something like that. So let's say, first of all, we've played this game. We played with a trait of 3. We played with a trait of 5. And you want to end up playing with a trait of 10. And end up playing with a trait of 10 because our number system is based on 10. So we want to end up at that place. So at some point when you play these games with your kids or your students, you're going to end up with a trait value of 10. And let me put side by side. And then that'll help move us into this next section. So I'm going to erase a little here. I'm going to rewrite this a little bit up here because we want to remember what we have here. Let's write this one. So we have 2 blacks, 1 purple, and 2 reds. I'm going to write that right here just so we can remember. And then we use some shorthand, 1P, 2R, and then we wanted to know how many R's that was. So then we went ahead and we said 2, and that's 9 reds, 1, and that's 3 reds, and 2, and that's just the reds. So we ended up with 23 reds. Now you might notice that I didn't put a plus sign in there. Your students will likely do it, or your kids will likely do it, and if they do that, then that's what you want to keep on using, is this plus sign. Okay, so now we've used this. We've used it on a trait of 10. Let's see how we can bridge that then into expanded notation. So I hope you're all getting out, seeing the colors with fall. Let's move this up here. Okay. All right. So now you can notice that I've taken the same tool that we've been using, and this is important, use tools over and over again. because your students then can get used to the different kinds of math tools that we use and how they go together. Removing these. All right, so now we have this board. I'm going to take these off. So we're no longer going to use these columns for colors. We're going to use them now for place values, because now we've played this game enough with a trade value of 10 that they understand where you get these numbers from. Just a smidgle, since I'm so short. Alrighty. Okay. Alright, so now we're going to move into the next stage, which is, we've already talked about the idea, because we played the trading game, with ones, tens, and hundreds. Okay, and again, we did that because we played the trading game with a trade value of 10. And we played it long enough so that we can now move into this. So we have this ones, tens, and hundreds. And that is in the, when we look at our chunks of the numbers that we're reading, this tells us how many ones there are. Oops. It tells us how many ones there are. So if we look at this whole number, we can then, just like we looked at it in terms of red, we looked at our other boards in terms of red, we're going to look at this board in terms of ones. This is, that's going to tell us what we have. We have so many ones. Blah, 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 ones. Now we're going to look at this chunk. So if you think about your numbers, when we have these 3 digits that go on, we're going to use the same pattern. So you're looking at patterns. Math is all about patterns. We're going to use the same pattern for the next chunk of 3 numbers. That makes sense, right? That we use the same pattern for the next 3. So we're going to use that same pattern. So we have these ones, these tens, and these hundreds. Sometimes in math, we just have to share with students where these words come from, where these patterns come from, and it usually makes sense. Ones, tens, hundreds, ones, tens, hundreds. And here's another question you can ask. If we went to the next chunk of 3, what do you think their columns would be headed? And then it's them thinking about this pattern, 1 tens, hundreds, 1 tens, hundreds. Now, if we look at this whole long number, we have this many ones, so that would mean that we would have this many this. Now, this is the ones in this place, right? But this comma right there, that tells us that we're in this second chunk of numbers. And this chunk of numbers tells us how many, instead of ones, not ones, but how many this place value. So let's look at the place value. Oops, almost wrote permanent marker on my board. So, ones, tens, hundreds, this is the thousands place value. Now this ones might look a little confusing, but it really gives us just the pattern for the numbers within that chunk. This is really the thousands. This is the thousands. All right, so we have the ones chunk and the thousands chunk. Ones chunk, thousands chunk. And that's really important for how we read these numbers, how we look at these numbers. And so now we're going to play another game that kind of goes along with the trading game, but it has a little bit of a different bend to it. So what we want to do is, it's a game where we have to know that if we want the biggest number, that means we would want our bigger numbers to be down here. So let's think about that for a while. Why? Why would we do that? So let's think back to our colors. Would we want a bunch of reds or would we want a bunch of blacks? And if you want to win the game, blacks are worth more reds than like purples or reds. So we want more blacks because they're worth more of those reds. Same thing here. We want more here because it's worth more of these. We want more here because it's worth more of these. So keep going back and forth between the game that they played, that they probably had a really good handle on, the purple, red, and black game. Keep going back and forth and referring to those things, all right? Okay, so now here's the board that your child would make for this one. So fold it in half first. So you fold just a piece of paper, just scrap paper in half, okay? And then open it back up, and I like to ask people to draw this line down the half to begin with. So fold it in half, open it up, and draw it down. And what that does is it just gives me a reminder that there's a chunk here and a chunk here. So we want to think of those different chunkings. So if we draw this line here, so I folded it, I drew the line. Now I'm going to do a triple fold. Remember, those are where you have to kind of line them up so that these three are pretty close to each other. So I'm going to line that up. And then I'm going to fold it over just to make our game board. And you have something that looks like this. So this is a small version of this one that we have up here. Put your line down. All right, so now we're going to, on your child's game board, then you want them to fill in the columns. But let's think about it a little bit first, okay? So remember, ask them for the pattern, have them write down the pattern, so they'll do ones, tens, hundreds, ones, tens, hundreds. And then we also want to make sure that they have the thousands up there and the ones up there. Okay, so that's our game board to begin with, okay? So now we're going to take turns. Again, I'm going to use a die, but remember, you can use number cards. Don't not do the game because you don't have a piece. Make something up. I mean, we're just playing with numbers here. So, all right, so I've made some cards that have the word thousands or ones on them. So I have a bunch of them. I have the same number of each, same number of thousand cards, and same number of one cards. That's important, right? Because we want to have the same chance of getting one over the other. All right, so what I'm going to do, and I would suggest, and when you play this game with your student or child or students, have it so that no one can see your board. So put a book or something around your board because you want there to be a little bit of suspense on who's winning. And if you'll notice when you can see people's boards, you kind of have an idea of who's winning. So, but make sure that you have your board showed or hidden. All right, so I'm just going to pick one of these. So I pick, and I got 1,000. So what that means is on my 1,000 chunk, I'm going to roll a die, and I'm going to have to place that number, whatever number I roll, in my 1,000 chunk. So this is the 1,000th chunk, and whatever I roll, I'm going to place it there. So there'll be a little strategy to this. So I'm going to roll the die, and I'm just using a 1, 3, 6 die. Oh, I got a 6. So if you think about it, now there's some figuring that goes on, right? So we have a die that goes from 1 to 6. 6 is the biggest number. So I'm probably going to put that 6 where I think it's going to give me the most bang for my number. So what would that be? I'm going to put it right here. I'm going to put my 6 right there. Now again, the person who's playing against me can't see my board. So they know that I'm in the thousands because I'm sharing that. I shared that I had to be in the thousands. But they don't know what number I rolled and they don't know where I put it. So that's my turn. Now it's the next person's turn. Okay, and so that person got a 1. I'm not cheating. So they got a 1. I'm going to roll the die. Yeah, oh, they got a 6 also. Alright, but they got a 6 in the 1 chunk. So this is player number 2. Again, they're gonna have their own board, but just so that you can see it. So I got a 6 and I got it in the 1 chunk, but I know a 6 is the highest number I can get, so I'm gonna put it here. My 6 in the 1 chunk. And then, I'm gonna pull another one. So now it's back to the first person's turn. What do I get? I'm gonna get 1. Alright, so now I'm in the 1 chunk. I got a 6 again. Really, really good. So I got another 6 in the 1 chunk. I'm gonna put my 6 here. Alright, and then this person, 1,000, and they got a 6, holy moly. 6 in the thousands. Ooh, we got a tie right now, but remember, we wouldn't know that because we're not going to see everybody's board. Okay, I'm going to play here. That's a lot of 6s. 1,000. Alright, so now I got to think, 1,000. So now I have to put this number in either the 1's place in the 1,000 chunk or the 10's place in the 1,000 chunk, and I rolled a 1. So these are like things that you want your students to think about. Don't tell them how to win or play the game. Let them play it a little bit and figure some stuff out, and maybe make some mistakes. That's okay. But I know that I got a 1, so I'm going to put it in my 1's place, and let's see what my team member does. They got a 1,000, and let's roll the die. They got a 1 in the thousands. Oh my goodness! This is funny. Okay, so let's roll one or do another one. I'm gonna go fast now. So 1,000 and a 5. Okay, so 1,000 and a 5. So now if I pull any more 1,000 cards, I lose my turn because my thousands are full. So let's see. 1, that's this team, 1 and a 4. So now a 1 and a 4. So they're in the 1 chunk, which is right here, and they got a number 4. Well, that's going to be kind of a tough one because 4 is kind of high, but not super high. I'm going to put it here just because I think that might work, but we'll see. All right, and then I'm going to pull another one. So this is for the top 1,000. Now see, I have all my thousands filled in, so I lose my turn. So let's play again. Now the bottom person gets to go, and they're going to be okay because they have a spot in each one, so it doesn't really matter. 1s. So 1s, and they got a 2. So this is my last place that I can even fill in. All right, now I'm on the top row. Got a 1, and so I get my turn because I still have some spaces in 1, and I got a 2. So 2 isn't a very high number. I'm going to give that to the 1s because this is where it's the fewest number of 1s. All right, play. Now I have the bottom 1,000. Just happened to get the 1,000, and got a 5 here. Okay. So now, this is the second person's turn. That means they finished. So the first person doesn't get to go again because they've all had the same number of turns. So if you don't get to go again and you have a blank, that blank turns into a 0. Which for this game, that 0 is really important because that made or broke your chances of winning. So now, let's think about this. So we want then our students to figure out a couple of things. One is, how do we say the number that we have? And the second is, who has the most in terms of 1s, okay? So we wrote this, and again, this is from our colored, when we were doing the colored trading game. We want to use the same kind of notation. So let's represent this first player. So what do we know? We know in the first player, and this is the whole reason why we do this. So we have this chunk of thousands, and we have this chunk of 1s. So how many thousands do we have? Well, we have 600 600, and that's thousands. So 600, we have 6, so instead of 6 or 2 blacks or 6 blacks, we have 6 hundreds. 600, and we have 5 tens, and we have 1 ones. But that's all in this chunk of 1,000. That's a big, big number. So we have that plus we have 600. Zero tens and 2 ones. So now you can kind of see the confusion that a student might think. They might think, oh my goodness, you're writing hundreds, tens, ones, hundreds, tens, ones. That's really confusing. Why are you doing that? Well, they're absolutely right. So this 110 chunk is different, isn't it? Because this is in the thousands section. So 600, let's write down what that means. 600, 5 tens. What's 5 tens worth? That's worth 50. And do we have one? And 1. All right, so that's how many thousands we have. That tells us how many what? How many thousands. So how many thousands do we have? 651 thousands. Thousands, that's how we read it. And it's we want them to read it as it's we want them to see the patterns and the systems that they can pull from this. So remember, this is thousands, and this is ones. And that thousands and ones can be related to the reds from our color game. So 651,000, now let's look at this chunk. So we're going to read this one. So 600s, you know what that is, 600s. We have 0 tens, you can write that or not write it, and 2 ones. So how do we read this? 602. 602. There's nothing in here. So we have 602. How do we read this? 651 thousands, because we have to tell them which part of the game board we're on. We're on the thousands part of the game board, this chunk over here. So 651,600. Oops. Two. And that's ones, but we don't say the ones. We don't say 602 ones. We just say 602. So we have to distinguish for whoever we're talking to about this mathematics. We have to distinguish if we're talking about the thousands chunk or the 1 chunk, and we do that by saying thousands when it's that part of the number. So we have 651,602. How would we say this one? What is this one? Well, if we can look at this, it's exactly the same thing. So 600, 510. So it's not 510, and so it's 600, which makes it nice, but it's not 510, it's 5 tens, so 50, and then 1. So we do have some possibilities for areas of error, and being able to read this off. So that's why we do this more than once. And you keep doing it over and over and over, and it's a game. So it's a game to the kids, and because it's a game, it's something that they can play, and that makes them raises their intrinsic motivation a little bit to learn this idea. So we have 651,602, and we have to figure out who won this game, who has the most points. So we would do this exact same thing for the second one. Well, we know we have 600, 5 tens, or 50, 1, and again, it's 651 what? 651,000, and then 642. Oops. 642. So 651,642. So now we have to figure out which one's bigger. And you want your students just to kind of go with it, figure out which one has more numbers. So let's look at this. We have the exact same number of hundred thousands. Let's say that again, 100,000. It's in the thousands chunk, the 100 place, 100,000. So we have the same number of 100,000s. We have the same number of 10,000s. And we have the same number of the ones in the thousands place. Exactly the same, 651,000. Exactly the same. You have the same 600 here, but look at this. We don't have any tens up here, and we have some down here. So this is the first place where we're different. And we're different, and this one has more. So the whole purpose of this is just to keep looking at it over and over to figure out what's happening. So we have more on this one, and we're in the ones chunk. So that thousands chunk, the ones chunk. This game is used just to really familiarize the students with the terms, familiarize the students with the patterns of numbers that we use, and to connect it to a simpler idea, which is the trading game with the colored pieces. And again, do these over and over and over so the kids get used to sharing their words, their understandings of these words, and become a little bit more familiar with writing out expanded notation once you get to the thousands chunk. The stickler is usually because we have the same thing here, but you can use that as an advantage. It's the same because it's a pattern that keeps repeating over and over and over. We want them to know that that pattern repeats over and over and over. And you can also ask them, okay, what do you think this next chunk would be? What is this next chunk? And then let it go. And if they're really interested, they'll start looking around. What is that next chunk? And so we want to present ideas as a question, not as a, go look and see what this next chunk is. But what do you think it is? I don't know what it is. So then you want them to be a little bit more interested and go and figure out what that next chunk might be. But the idea is the patterns in the chunks remains the same. So when this next chunk comes up, which by the way is the millions, we still will have hundreds, tens, and ones. That pattern stays consistent. And that's the nice thing for mathematics, so that your student can look back at it and use this consistent pattern. So, there we go. We're going to do, I'm going to do another lesson a little bit later today on number bonds, specifically for second grade. If you have any other questions, please let me know about any questions or topics that you'd like me to do some work with, and I'd be happy to do so. So I hope you have a great week, and thanks for joining us.